Hey friends, tonight's story takes us somewhere gritty, back to the roaring heart of the Industrial Revolution. A time of smog, steam, and stolen childhoods. This isn't the textbook version of history. We're stepping inside the soot-stained walls of a cotton mill, seen through the eyes of a 12-year-old boy who never really had a chance to be a child. Forget invention and progress for a minute. This is about survival, sacrifice, and the silent cost of the machines that built the modern world. So before we get into it, give the video a like and subscribe if you're into these darker human stories from the past. No pressure, just if it speaks to you, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing this little community gathering across time zones. Now dim your lights, maybe get a blanket, or turn on a soft fan for that steady hum. Let's wind the clock back and step into the mill. Hey friends, tonight's story takes us somewhere gritty, back to the roaring heart of the Industrial Revolution. A time of smog, steam, and stolen childhoods. This isn't the textbook version of history. We're stepping inside the soot-stained walls of a cotton mill, seen through the eyes of a 12-year-old boy who never really had a chance to be a child. Forget invention and progress for a minute. This is about survival, sacrifice, and the silent cost of the machines that built the modern world. So before we get into it, give the video a like and subscribe if you're into these darker human stories from the past. No pressure, just if it speaks to you, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing this little community gathering across time zones. Now dim your lights, maybe get a blanket, or turn on a soft fan for that steady hum. Let's wind the clock back and step into the mill. I awake to the sound of Ma's gentle shaking and the clanging of distant factory bells. My body protests. I feel as if I only just collapsed onto the straw mattress a moment ago. It's still dark, the faintest grey of pre-dawn seeping through the cracks in our shutters. I'm 12 years old, but some days I feel twice that. My back is sore, and my small hands are calloused, bearing blisters from yesterday's toil. In the corner of our cramped room, I hear the soft snores of my little sister Mary. How I envy her few extra minutes of sleep before it's her turn to rise. The air in our tenement is cold and damp. I pull my threadbare blanket around my shoulders and sit up. Rats scurry in the walls, our constant neighbors in this crowded workers' quarter. Ma has a tallow candle lit, the weak flame illuminating the weary expression on her face. She hands me a small chunk of stale bread for breakfast. I nibble it slowly, trying not to think of the hollow ache in my stomach. Often this is all I get, until midday, a hard crust, and if I'm lucky, a sip of watered-down milk. Up with you, Oliver, Ma whispers. Her voice is caring but firm. She has already tied a kerchief around her hair and put on her shawl, readying to walk me to the mill. It's near 5. You can't be late. I know she worries if I'm late. The overseer will dock my pay or worse, beat me. So I force myself fully awake and stand on aching legs. My clothes are simple, a coarse cotton shirt and short trousers from an older cousin, patched many times over. I have no socks, only a pair of worn-down clogs for my feet. In the corner, De stirs on his cot. He's not going to the mill. He hasn't had regular work for months now. He coughs, a deep rasping cough that never really goes away. Dee used to be a weaver, working at a handloom in our home village before we moved here to Manchester. But ever since the machines took over, his loom stands silent. Mechanized looms in the big factories can weave far more cloth than a man like him could at home. The same industrial progress that built the mills left him and many craftsmen without work. Now he picks up odd jobs when he can, but an injury last winter left him with a bad leg. Most days he can barely manage the walk to seek day labor, and he returns home discouraged. We survive week to week mostly on what little Mary and I earn at the factory. It weighs on him, I see it in his eyes, the pain of a father who cannot provide for his family. He sits up to watch me dress. In the dim light, I can make out his gaunt face, and the worry etched into it. Stay safe today, lad, Der murmurs, voice heavy with regret. He doesn't say much more, he never does these days, but I can feel the apology in his words. He hates that I must work to keep us fed. He once told me stories of better times before I was born, when he earned enough that no child of 8 or 9 had to work. But those times are gone for us. Ma helps fasten the little buttons of my shirt. My hands tremble, partly from the cold and partly from exhaustion. She notices a small raw wound on my forearm, an ugly scrape from yesterday when I brushed against a moving belt at the mill. With a sigh, she dabs it with a rag soaked in vinegar to clean it. I wince but stay quiet. It's a minor hurt. I've had work. In the corner, Mary stirs awake, rubbing her eyes. At 10 years old, she's just started at the factory herself a few months ago. The law says children under 9 shouldn't work in the mills, but that didn't stop the mill owners from hiring her the moment Ma begged for a second income. Officially, Mary is listed as being 9. Records are easy to fudge when desperate families and unscrupulous overseers collude. She's small and thin but quick with her hands. I try to look out for her when I can, though we work in different rooms. Right now, half asleep, she gives me a weak smile. "Morning, Ollie," she whispers. We share that brief moment of understanding. Another day is beginning. Ma breaks off a tiny piece of bread for Mary as well. It's all we have. Ma herself won't eat until later if there's anything left. My baby brother Tommy whimpers in Ma's arms. He's just a year old, a surprise born into our family's hardest times. She will nurse him while we're away at work. I lean over and gently stroke his downy cheek. His tiny face cracks into a smile at me despite the early hour. That small innocent smile warms my heart. In this gritty life, little moments like that are precious. I allow myself a faint smile back. For Tommy's sake, I whisper a promise in my mind. I'll endure another day in the factory, so he might have a chance to grow up. Ma drapes an old coat around my shoulders. It once belonged to Durr years ago when he was younger and stronger, before the hard times shrunk him. On me it's oversized, but I'm grateful for any warmth on a chilly morning. The coat smells of smoke and machine oil scents that cling to everything we own. With the first light of dawn barely peeking, Ma leads Mary and me out of our lodgings. I take one last glance at Durr, who has lain back down and is staring at the ceiling. He raises a hand in silent farewell, and I nod. Out on the street, the world is still mostly dark. A few gas lamps flicker along the road, illuminating puddles from last night's rain. I tug the coat closer as a cold breeze cuts through the alleys. My breath fogs in the air. Our neighborhood is alive now, with the shapes of other workers emerging from their cramped homes. I see other children my age, or younger, rubbing their eyes, trudging alongside parents or older siblings. A few yards away, old Miller is ushering out her grandson, who must be no older than 7. The little boy stumbles half asleep, and she scolds him softly to wake up. My heart aches at the sight. He's so small he should be home playing, not heading into a factory's morgue. But such is our reality. Poverty forces even the youngest of us into the mills to earn a few pennies. Many families like ours have no adult breadwinner. Death, illness, or the industrial changes have seen to that. So we children must shoulder the burden. We join the trickle of workers making their way through narrow cobblestone streets. The sky is a dull purple, dawn still not fully broken. Above the rooftops I see it, the great chimney of the textile mill, rising like a dark tower against the horizon. Even from here a faint haze of smoke drifts out of it, catching the early light. That chimney has been belching soot every day since I can remember. It paints the sunrise in streaks of grey. As we walk, Ma wraps her arm around Mary, keeping her close. Mary yawns and huddles against Ma's side. I walk on Ma's other side, trying to put on a brave face for both of them. The streets are slick with mud. We step around a heap of horse manure carriages passed through before dawn. The stench mixes with the smell of garbage and the ever-present coal smoke from factory furnace. A few other laborers nod to us as we pass. There's Mr. Webb, a stooped old man who cleans the factory floors. He tips his cap to Ma. Farther ahead I see a group of older boys, maybe 15 or 16, laughing raucously despite the hour, probably to keep their spirits up for the long day ahead. In that group is my friend William. He's 13 and tall for his age, already doing heavier work moving cotton bales. He catches sight of me and offers a lopsided grin. I wave back. Having a friend like Will at the mill makes it just a bit more bearable. We often share our midday meal and exchange jokes to keep from going mad in the drudgery. We pass by a row of terraced houses that were once red brick, now blackened by soot. Here and there dim light seeps from a shuttered window. People are waking to another day of labor in the Industrial Revolution's heart. Our town of Manchester. It's hard to imagine that not long ago this was a small village. But now it's a sprawling city of mills and smoke, grown from humble beginnings into an industrial giant. I remember the day we first arrived in this city 4 years ago. I was just a small boy then, clinging to Ma's hand as we stepped off the cart that brought us from our country village. The factory floor, inside the mill, the world transforms into a cacophony of noise and motion. Even early in the morning, the spinning room is already alive with the thunder of machinery. The moment Mary and I step through the heavy wooden doors, we are hit by a wall of sound. The rhythmic clatter of hundreds of spindles whirring, belts whipping overhead, and the deep thrum of the mill's central steam engine reverberating through the floor. The air is thick with the smell of oil, sweat, and raw cotton fibers. I can taste the cotton dust on my tongue as I breathe. Fluffs of lint dance in the dim gaslight that flickers along the high ceiling. We part ways immediately. Mary scurries off to the weaving shed where she works, and I hurry to the spinning room on the ground floor. There's no time for farewells. The overseers are already bellowing orders to get in position. I join a line of children and a few adults pushing through a narrow corridor between humming machines. We know our stations by heart. I work as a piecer in this spinning room, tending to several large spinning mules. Each mule is a monstrous iron contraption, stretching nearly the length of the hall, lined with dozens upon dozens of spindles that twist cotton into thread. The machines are never truly silent except on Sundays. They are the heartbeat of this mill, and we the workers are like blood cells coursing around them, always moving. The floor beneath my feet vibrates steadily, a reminder that below us in the engine house, a coal-fired steam engine is pumping away. That engine drives the whole factory. Its power flows through a network of shafts and leather belts that run overhead. I steal a quick glance upward. High above, a massive shaft spins, turning wide belts that hang down to each row of machines. The belts hiss and slap slightly as they loop around whirring wheels. I've heard the older workers talk about how it all works, what's improved steam engine and all these gears and belts combine to make the machines run faster than any man could push them by hand. To me, it's like a giant, unseen beast lives under the mill, its breath the steam and its muscles those spinning shafts, driving the machinery at a relentless pace. I reach my usual station by one of the spinning mules. The noise here is overwhelming. To speak to the boy next to me, I'd have to shout at the top of my lungs, and even then I'd barely be heard. We mostly communicate with gestures and nods during work. I nod now to Jacob, the boy on the next machine over. He's a freckle-faced kid of about my age. We exchange tight-lipped half-smiles. There's no joy in being here but a shared camaraderie that we're both in the same boat. My machine, a spinning mule, extends in front of me on metal rails. It's called a mule because it's a hybrid of earlier inventions, the spinning jenny and the water frame, or so I was told. The mule intermittently moves a large carriage full of spindles back and forth along the rail. When the carriage pulls outwards, hundreds of threads spin and stretch. When it rolls back, the threads wind onto bobbins. As a piecer, it's my job to watch for threads that break and quickly mend, piece them together again before the machine's cycle completes and the carriage returns. If I miss a broken thread, the resulting yarn will be flawed and I'll get a scolding, or worse, a fine from my meager wages. Already the first break has occurred. Perhaps the morning's setup wasn't perfect. I spot a dangling thread that has snapped near the spindle. Acting on instinct, I dart forward between the moving parts, reaching with nimble fingers. The machinery clatters around me, unforgiving. I have only a few seconds to snatch the broken ends and twist them back together before the machine's cycle completes and the carriage returns. My small size and quickness are my advantages. An adult's hands would be too large and clumsy to do this at speed. I catch the drifting strand and its partner and expertly twirl them to join the fluffy ends. A smear of cotton dust coats my fingertips. In training, they taught us to lick the fibers to soften them and roll them into a continuous thread, but the cotton is always bitter and gritty on the tongue. Still, I do it without thinking. The thread is pieced just in time. I withdraw my hand as the spinning mule's carriage begins to slide back on its rails towards me. If I were a heartbeat slower, the carriage could crush my fingers or worse, knock me down. I step back, breathing a sigh of relief. This delicate dance will repeat hundreds, maybe thousands of times today. The mule moves, threads may snap. I must dart in to fix them. Sometimes I feel like a machine myself, performing the same motions again and again until my arms ache and my legs are numb from running up and down the mule's length. Around me, the other pieces, mostly children like me, are doing the same work. I see little John on the next mule, standing on tiptoe to reach a high spindle, his face pinched in concentration. He's only 9, one of the smallest in our room. Further down the aisle, old Mr. Turner, one of the adult spinners, supervises 2 mules. He's responsible for the overall quality of the yarn, while we children handle the quick repairs. Turner is middle-aged, but he looks decades older. His hair is grey and his back permanently hunched from years of stooping over machines. He gives me a curt nod of acknowledgement as he passes, checking my section. I'm doing fine so far, so he doesn't bother me. Turner can be gruff, but he's not cruel. He knows we kids are the ones keeping his machines running smooth. If too many threads break and aren't fixed, he'll get in trouble with the overseer for lost production. The overseer, Mr. Harding, patrols the aisle with a keen eye and a long leather strap in his hand. I spot him at the far end of the room, his tall, thin figure cutting a silhouette in the maze of machinery. He's like a predatory bird, always looking for someone slowing down or doing something wrong. I felt the sting of that leather strap before across my shoulders when I first started, and wasn't fast enough. The memory makes me instinctively straighten and refocus on my work. There will be no idle moments on his watch. The noise and pace are unrelenting. Communication beyond a few feet is nearly impossible over the den. The machines create a constant mechanical roar, metal wheels grinding, spindles whirling with high-pitched whines, belts thumping. The sound rattles in my skull. When I was younger, I used to clamp my hands over my ears in pain, but I quickly learned that if I didn't keep my hands ready at the machine, I'd miss a broken thread or get a clout from an overseer. So now I endure the noise. I've grown somewhat accustomed to it, though at night I often fall asleep with the phantom ringing of machines still in my ears. The mill owners recently installed new iron frames on some of the mules to increase their speed, which only makes them louder and more dangerous. The faster the machine runs, the more threads snap, and the harder we have to work. Progress, they call it. I glance at the far wall where a set of newer spinning frames stands, sleek painted iron gleaming under the lint dust. Rumor among us workers is that a self-acting spinning mule is being tested in another mill nearby. A machine that can spin and wind without needing as many pieces to run in and out. We whisper about it during breaks. If those machines take over, some of us will lose our jobs. It's a strange feeling. On one hand, I dream of anything that could lessen the burden on our backs, but on the other hand, I know that when new machines arrive, often children like me are simply tossed aside as redundant. For now though, this mill still needs us. I wipe sweat from my brow with a dirty sleeve. It's early morning and already the spinning room grows warm. The overseers keep the windows shut. They say the yarn spins better in humid, warm air, so the threads don't snap as easily. That may be true, but it means we work in a stuffy haze of heat and humidity, even on a cool day. I can feel perspiration trickling down my back, under my oversized coat and shirt. My throat is dry, but I won't get a sip of water for hours. As the morning wears on, I fall into the rhythm of work. The motions become automatic. I move along my section of the machine, eyes scanning rows of threads for any that have broken or snarled. The machinery clacks and groans, and I move with it, a well-rehearsed. Occasionally I cough. Each breath carries tiny bits of cotton fluff that stick in my lungs and throat. Almost everyone here has a perpetual cough. The mill cough, they call it. Some of the older boys hack up black or grey phlegm each morning from all the dust they've inhaled over the year. It's hard, sweaty, painful work. But as strange as it sounds, there's a part of my mind that finds a small point of pride in keeping up with the machine. When I manage to piece a thread at just the last second, and hear the machine continue smoothly, I feel a brief moment of triumph. It's a private little victory I cling to, one of the few sources of accomplishment available to a child in a place like this. Still, by the time the faint light of dawn outside grows into a white glow filtering through the grimy windows, my initial energy has faded into weariness. I have been on my feet for hours already, bending, stretching, running a few steps back and forth, ever vigilant. My stomach growls, hunger gnawing, because that scrap of bread at home was hardly enough. I try not to think of food. Instead I focus on small things, the pattern of sunlight creeping across the floorboards through the window, or the way dust motes swirl in a shaft of light when someone opens a door brief. Occasionally a wave of fresh air will waft in from a door or window opening somewhere, giving us a momentary breath of relief from the thick, linty atmosphere. The workers around me are a mix of young and old, but mostly young. In this spinning room, I'd wager more than half of us are children. It's cheaper for the mill to use kids. Our small hands are perfect for the delicate work, and they pay us a pittance for it. I glance around between tasks and see a sea of youthful faces, pale, drawn, many streaked with sweat and cotton dust. Most are thin as rails, bones visible under sallow skin. We wear tattered, oil-stained clothes. Many of us work barefoot or with clogs worn down to nearly nothing. A number of my friends carry scars, burn marks, missing fingertips, patches of hair that never grew back right after some mishap. The younger ones look far older than their years, shoulders stooped and eyes dulled by exhaustion. Some children here look as young as 8, though officially they're all supposed to be 9 or above. I even heard of a couple of little ones 6 or 7 years old, who help out by picking up scraps under the machines, but they're kept out of sight when any inspectors come. Here childhood is brief, and work life begins almost as soon as one can walk steadily. I think back to my own start in this mill. I was 8 when Ma brought me to the manager's office, desperately pleading for them to take me on as a doffer or scavenger. I remember clinging to her skirt, terrified by the factory's roar, my eyes wide at the towering machine. The manager looked me up and down, assessing if I was big enough to be of use. I was small for my age, but starvation has a way of making even young ones take on work beyond their years. He finally nodded and said I could pick up cotton waste from under the carding machine. I spent my first year crawling on hands and knees under dangerous machines, scooping up piles of cotton fluff and discarded threads while the machine still spun and whirred above me. I shudder at the memory. Back then I was constantly in fear. Those early machines didn't stop for me. One wrong move, one moment of not paying attention, and I could have been caught in the gears or crushed by a moving part. More than once I saw older boys pull smaller children out from under the machines, just in the nick of time. Some weren't fast enough. The thought sends a chill through me even in this heat. I survived that period unscathed, save for bruises and a scar on my leg, but not everyone was so lucky. After proving myself and growing a bit, I was promoted to piecer at age 10. It's slightly better I'm mostly upright, and not crawling on the filthy floor, but the responsibility is greater too. 2 years I've been a piecer now, and I've grown used to the endless standing and quick reflexes required. Even so, each day is a trial on my body. My musings are cut short by a sharp crack in the air. Over the din of machines, it's hard to hear anything clearly, but I recognize that sound, the overseer's strap hitting flesh. I turn just enough to glimpse what happened. Harding is looming over a cowering figure. It's little John, the 9-year-old piecer I noted earlier. He must have missed a broken thread or perhaps wasn't fast enough. The machine under his care has a tangle of fibers now, causing it to jam and screech. Harding's face is twisted in anger. Even from a distance I can see the flush in his cheeks. He raises the leather strap and brings it down again on John's back with force. John squeezes his eyes shut, tears mixing with the dirt on his face. But he doesn't cry out. No one would hear him if he did. I wince and quickly return my eyes to my own work, heart pounding. There's nothing I can do to help without inviting the same punishment. All around, children keep their heads down and work a little faster, each of us silently praying, "Don't let it be me next." Beatings are common in the mill, a cruel incentive to keep us attentive. Mr. Harding shouts something that gets lost in the clamor, likely a warning to everyone that laziness won't be tolerated. Out of the corner of my eye, I see him yank the tangled mess of cotton from John's machine and toss it aside. He marches on down the aisle, his boots striking the floor in time with the chugging engine. John, trembling and red-eyed, gingerly returns to his task, trying not to sigh. The machine is up and running again, and he forces himself to focus. My cheeks burn with anger and pity. John is so small, expecting him to manage without a mistake in these conditions is cruel. But such is the way of the mill. Those in charge care only about output and efficiency, not about how we feel. We are cheap, replaceable labor to them. I swallow my frustration and double-check my own threads, determined not to give Harding a reason to single me out. My arm muscles are starting to ache from the repetitive motion, and my eyes strain to keep track of the fine threads in the dim light. The single gas lamp above casts a yellowish glow that flickers whenever the pressure in the gas line drops. Shadows dance across the spinning frames, occasionally making it tricky to see the smaller strands clearly. More than once I've thought a thread was fine only to realize in better light it was broken, nearly missing it. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. Some older spinners say that years in these factories ruin the eyes. I believe them. At 12 I already sometimes feel my vision blur by evening. On and on the morning time in the factory is peculiar. It either moves unbearably slow, or blurs away in the flurry of work. This morning it feels endless. Sweat soaks my shirt. Bits of cotton stick to my skin, making me itch. The relentless noise numbs my mind, and I slip into a mechanical trance of motion. Piece the thread, step back, watch the carriage, step forward, twist the fibers, step back, each cycle blending into the next. At one point a sudden commotion makes me snap out of my daze. A loud clanging bell rings out, above the machine noise, an alarm that means stop the machine. Immediately Mr. Turner and other adult spinners begin halting the mules. One by one the rows of machines slow to a standstill, with groans and whines. The belts above us go slack, flapping as the main shaft's speed is reduced. A hush, relative hush falls over the room. The engine is still rumbling faintly, but the spinning machinery's roar has quieted. I stand there confused for a moment, chest heaving from exertion, ears ringing in the sudden relative silence. Stopping the machines outside of scheduled breaks is my first thought is an accident, but I see no panic or gathering crowd around a victim. Thank God. Instead I notice the overseer Harding straightening his waistcoat and smoothing his hair. He gestures sharply at us to line up by our stations. An inspection. Yes, that must be it. Perhaps the mill owner or an important visitor is touring, or maybe a government inspector has come unexpectedly. They wouldn't stop the machines for the owner. He's seen them running plenty. A government inspector is more likely someone who needs to be shown a sanitized version of our reality. I exchange looks with Jacob and then little John, who stands wiping his face trying to hide that he'd been crying from the beating. We've learned through whispers how to behave if an inspector or gentleman comes through. Stand still unless spoken to, look reasonably content or at least not miserable, and definitely do not mention the actual hours or beatings, unless you want to lose your job. The older workers will usually do the talking. My heart is still pounding from adrenaline, but now nerves creep in. Inspectors mean well for us perhaps, but their visits put everyone on edge. The mill managers often hand-pick a couple of clean, slightly healthier-looking kids to demonstrate a brief lesson, or recite their ABCs to show we're getting the education the law requires. I can barely read, but I learned to slowly spell my name in letters in case I was ever asked. Fortunately that's never happened yet. As we stand at uneasy attention, I catch a glimpse toward the main entrance of the spinning room. A small group of men in suits and top hats enters, led by the factory manager and the head overseer. They definitely don't belong in this grimy setting. Immaculate coats in dark wool, polished boots that have likely never stepped in cotton fluff before. One man has a notebook, another a stern expression, and a monocle. Government men surely. They start their walk through, the manager pointing out various machines, practically shouting to be heard over the ambient engine noise that still vibrates through the building. The machines around me are stopped, but I can hear in the distance other rooms are still running. They probably only halted this section for the inspection, the part with the youngest workers, to better show and hear. As they approach, Mr. Harding stands near us, posture rigid, that leather strap conspicuously tucked out of sight now into his wide belt. The air feels tense. The men draw nearer, and I can begin to make out snippets of their conversation over the lingering. Children appear in good order, one man says loudly, with a crisp accent not of our parts. He peers at us. I stare straight ahead at my machine, resisting the urge to avert my eyes like a scared animal. I know I must appear neither too downtrodden nor too bold. Another man with mutton chop whiskers steps forward and addresses Jacob, who is at the end of our row. "How old are you, son?" he asks above the noise, trying to sound friendly but coming off as awkward. Jacob glances at Harding, who nods subtly. 12, sir. Jacob lies evenly. I know for a fact Jacob is 10, but he's tall for his age. The man nods, making a note. "And how many hours a day do you work?" "From 6 in the morning to 8 at night, sir," Jacob replies dutifully. He's telling what is technically the truth, but leaving out that we don't count the brief meals as part of those hours. The law says kids of our age shouldn't work more than 12 hours a day, and no night shifts. But in practice we're inside the mill for much longer when you include meal breaks between work stretches. The inspector doesn't need to know we often do 13 or 14 hours with only a pause for breakfast and lunch. "Do you go to school?" the man with the notebook asks, adjusting his monocle. "Yes, sir, we have lessons here," Jacob responds, pointing vaguely toward a corner of the room where a black slate and chalk sit propped against the wall. In reality, the schooling is a token gesture, perhaps a half hour of basic reading taught by an older worker when inspectors are expected. We hardly get any real education amidst our exhaustion. But again, on paper, the mill provides the required 2 hours of schooling for children. The men seem satisfied and move on, scanning the room. One of them clucks his tongue when he notices John's red eyes and the mark on his forearm from the strap. "Are you all right, lad?" he asks John directly. John stiffens. I hold my breath,
If John complains or says the wrong thing, Miss Harding will surely make him pay later. John nods rapidly, not trusting his voice. I instinctively pipe up to distract the questioner. He's just a bit tired, sir. We all are after the morning's work. I try to give a polite smile. The man with whiskers studies me. And what is your name? He inquires. Oliver, sir. I reply loudly. How old are you, Oliver? I hesitate, then decide to stick to the official script. 12, sir. I say, which at least in my case is true. He nods. Do they treat you well here? You're not overworked, given time for meals and such. His tone is one of concern, but I can sense Harding's gaze drilling into me. I clench my fist behind my back, nails digging into my palm, and force myself to answer. I manage all right, sir. We get a lunch break, and sometimes a short break at noon. That's an overstatement. Our breaks are scant, but I won't risk saying more. One of the gentlemen mutters. At least they appear healthy enough. Another chimes in, perhaps looking at the windows. Ventilation could be better. Our manager quickly responds. We're refurbishing some windows for more air. Indeed, always striving to improve conditions. I almost snort at that blatant lie but manage to keep a straight face. We all know the windows are usually shut to preserve humidity, not for our comfort. Within minutes the exchange is over. The manager ushers the inspectors onward to tour the next area. Perhaps the weaving shed, or the carding room. Harding barks at us to resume our duties. The signal is given for the engine to fully resume power in our section. Soon the machinery around us is ramping up again. The spinning mule jerks back to life, and the roaring fills our ears once more. As I re-engage in the ceaseless work, I feel a mixture of emotion. Part of me had hoped that maybe these inspectors would see the truth and force some change. Shorter hours, kinder treatment. They carry themselves with authority that suggests they could make that happen. But witnessing the charade just now, it's clear how easy it is for the factory bosses to present a cleaned-up version of reality. We wouldn't dare tell the inspectors how long our days really are, or how Mr. Harding uses that strap. Who would risk their job or invite retaliation? The gentlemen likely suspect the truth, but unless they catch a factory in blatant violation, they'll report improvements are underway and move on. As the machines clatter intensely again, I mend another broken thread and wonder if anything will really change. They passed a law a couple of years back to protect child workers, setting limits on our hours and requiring schooling. But here on the factory floor, those limits are stretched or ignored. The mill owners care more about their profits than Parliament's word. So while inspectors come and go, we remain here working as always. I shake off the thoughts and refocus. The morning wears on, and I can feel fatigue building in every muscle. But I know that soon the bell for the midday break will sound. That thought is what keeps me going now. The promise of a brief respite. A chance to sit, eat and steal a few minutes of rest. Or simple camaraderie with friends. My stomach growls again, and I silently urge the time forward, counting down the minutes to freedom, even if it's only for a precious half hour.
A brief respite. When the piercing clang of the noontime bell finally echoes through the mill, it's as if a spell is broken. The machines gradually grind to a halt, belts slowing, spindles coming to rest, the great engine easing its relentless churning. The sudden reduction in noise is almost disorienting. For a few moments my ears continue to ring with phantom sounds, but then blessed quiet, or what passes for quiet here, settles over the factory floor. I step back from my machine and roll my shoulders, trying to work out the stiffness. My legs are trembling from hours of standing and sprinting short lengths, to and fro. Sweat has dried on my skin, leaving me itchy and uncomfortable under my soiled clothes. But relief is at hand. It's lunch break, a whole glorious 30 minutes where the masters allow us to pause. All around me, children and adult workers alike sag against walls or sink to the floor where they stand. Some of the younger ones just plop right down on the dusty floorboards, too exhausted to care about the grime. Little John, still sniffling from his earlier punishment, slides down with his back against the mule, rubbing at the welt on his back. I fish into my pocket for the small cloth bundle Ma prepared for my midday meal. Inside is a piece of coarse bread and a few cold boiled potato slices from last night's scant supper. It isn't much, but I'm famished. I make my way through the maze of idle machines toward the courtyard outside, where the air is fresher. Traditionally, if weather permits, we prefer to eat under the open sky, rather than in the lint-filled atmosphere of the spinning room. I catch sight of Mary weaving through the crowd from the weaving shed, coming to find me. My little sister looks flushed, Loose strands of her brown hair stick to her sweaty cheeks. The weaving shed is even warmer than the spinning room, she's told me, with all the looms packed together. I raise a hand and she beams when she spots me. We meet near the doorway and slip outside together. The factory's yard is a drab, packed dirt space enclosed by brick walls. Stacks of cotton bales line one side, and a handcart, laden with coal for the engine, sits in a corner. But above, the sky is a pale blue today, with the sun managing to peek through the persistent haze of coal smoke. I tilt my face upward for a second, letting the cool February air brush over my sweaty skin. The chill is welcome. It reminds me that I'm alive beyond just the routine of the machines. Mary and I settle on an overturned wooden crate that serves as an impromptu bench. She unwraps her own tiny bundle of food, mostly the same as mine, bread and a few cooked turnip pieces. For a minute, we eat in silence, too hungry to converse. The bread is tough and dry, but I chew dutifully, washing it down with a sip from the tin cup of water I filled at the pump. Around us, small clusters of workers gather, eating and talking quietly. Some older boys share crude jokes by the coal cart, a brief laugh cutting through the air. A group of girls from the carding room sit together, braiding each other's hair while nibbling on bits of cheese one had saved. These small acts of normalcy, laughter, friendliness, grooming, feel precious in the midst of our hard day. Before I've finished my last bit of potato, my friend William appears, ambling toward us with his long stride. He must have come from lugging cotton bales or tending the carding machines upstairs. "Ollie," he calls, a grin on his face. Mary scoots over to make space and Will plops down next to me on the crate. He's sweating and his shirt is covered in bits of cotton fluff that cling to his sleeves and vest. Despite this, he's somehow managed to maintain a cheerful light in his eye. Will produces an apple from his pocket, shriveled but still an apple, and immediately splits it in two with a pocket knife. He hands half to me. I hesitate. Apples are a rare treat for us. "Go on, take it," he insists, pressing it into my hand. "My mum got a few cheap because they were bruised. I saved one for you." Gratefully, I bite into the apple half. It's a bit soft and mealy, but the tangy juice tastes like heaven to my tongue after swallowing cotton dust all morning. Mary looks at us expectantly, and Will chuckles and gives her a bite of his half. "Don't tell the others, Mary, or I'll have the whole factory at me begging for a slice," he jokes. Mary giggles, an actual giggle, a sound rare enough to be cherished. Seeing her smile makes me smile too, a warmth blooming in my chest. Despite the misery of our work, moments like this, sharing a treat with a friend, hearing my sister laugh, remind me that we're still human, still children in some way, not just machines. "How's your day?" Will asks between bites of apple and bread. I shrug, loosening the rag around my neck that I wear to keep lint out of my collar. "Same as always. Threads keep breaking with this new rush order. Harding's already whipped John today, and we had an inspector come through." Will's eyebrows raise in interest. "Oh, a government man?" I nod. "A couple of them, asking questions. We told them what the masters want them to hear. You know how it goes." I keep my voice low. "One never knows if an overseer might be lurking even during break." Will snort. "They come, they look, they leave, and now it changes," he says cynically. He's a year older, and tends to be a bit more jaded. "Last year they passed that new law to make things better, and here we are still working sunrise to sunset." Mary pipes up softly. "They do teach us a little now, like letters." She tries to find a positive. She's been going to a Sunday school on our only day off and has learned a few letters of the alphabet. I'm proud of her for that. I can recognize my name in writing and maybe a couple dozen words, but no more. School was a luxury our family couldn't afford once hardship hit. Will chuckles kindly. I suppose a bit of learning is better than none, but I'd rather have a full belly and a shorter work day than know how to spell Constantinople." He winks at her to show he means no offense. Mary smiles shyly and returns to nibbling her bread. I lean back, stretching my arm. "Heard any news, Will? You always have something interesting." Will often picks up gossip and information from older workers or from the streets. His mother takes in laundry and hears tidbits from various households, which he loves to relay to me. He brightens at the invitation. "Well," he says, voice dropping conspiratorially, "some are saying the new railway line will extend further north next year. Imagine that, steam engines going all the way to Leeds, maybe even Scotland one day." My mind conjures the image of the steam locomotive I've only heard about. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway opened a few years back in 1830, but I was too young and busy working to see it. Neither of us has seen it yet,
but we've heard tales. Have you gone to see the trains yet? I ask eagerly. Will shakes his head. Not yet. Hoping to maybe one Sunday if I can spare the time and walk out to Patricroft where the tracks run. They say the locomotive they call the Rocket can go 30 miles an hour. Fitting name as it shoots by like a cannonball on wheels. His eyes gleam with excitement. Faster than any horse. Can you imagine, Ollie? Carriages flying across the land powered by steam. He spreads his arms as if to signify the wonder of it. His grin wide. I can't help but catch his excitement. I imagine for a moment what it would be like to ride one wind in my face. The world rushing by faster than ever. It seems like magic. Maybe we'll go together one day. I picture it. Will and I sneaking off on a Sunday after church, following the sounds of the iron horse until we see plumes of smoke and the great engine chugging along the tracks. For a moment my heart lifts at the idea of witnessing something so wondrous and different from our daily grind. Will continues, lowering his voice further. Also, my mum said she heard that some men in Parliament are pushing again for a 10-hour workday law. Michael Sadler tried last year and nearly succeeded. They call it the 10 hours. Maybe they'll pass it one of these days, and then the masters will find a way around it like they always do. I finish for him with a sigh. I don't mean to be negative, but it's hard not to be skeptical. Owners have been fighting against the 10 hours bill for years. They think reducing hours will ruin their profits. After the 1833 law limiting kids a bit, some owners just turn to hiring more adults for night shifts or misreporting ages. Still, hearing that people out there are still campaigning for humane hours gives a small spark of hope. If it ever happens though, imagine Will, only 10 hours a day instead of 14, we might see daylight after work, maybe have time to, I don't know, live a little. He pats my shoulder. We'll hold on to that thought, pal. Some folks are fighting for it. Perhaps one day. Mary finishes her bread and tugs on my sleeve. Ollie, can we go to the pump? I'm thirsty. There's a communal water pump at the edge of the yard where we can refill our tin cups. Sure. I stand, my muscles protest. Will stands as well, towering a good head above me. He's hit a growth spurt that I'm still waiting on. We walk over to the pump together and take turns working the handle. The pump squeaks in rhythm as cool water gushes out. I fill Mary's cup, and then mine. The water has a metallic taste, but it washes down the dry bread nicely. I splash a bit on my face, rubbing off some grime. Mary does the same, giggling as droplets run off her nose. Will throws caution aside and dumps a whole cupful over his head, shaking out his sandy hair like a wet dog. Phew, that's the ticket, he says with a laugh. Some nearby boys chuckle and egg him on, and he pretends to shake like a dog, flinging water drops everywhere. Even I have to chuckle at his silly display. For a brief moment the factory yard feels almost like a schoolyard with children at play, rather than a pen for exhausted young workers. Before the bell rings, a few of the younger children start a playful game of tag near the coal cart. They dart around with leftover energy, giggling as they narrowly avoid bumping into the resting adults. I watch them and for a moment it's like an echo of a normal childhood game. A brief flash of joy against the dreary backdrop of the factory yard. Even some of the older workers crack smiles at the sight. One boy pretends to be Mr. Harding, swaggering with an exaggerated frown, sending us into quiet snickers. It feels good to laugh genuinely, even if just for a minute, our spirits lifting in unison. Our laughter is abruptly cut short by the bellow of an overseer from the doorway. Break time is almost up. Back to work, you lot. Mr. Harding's voice slices through our ears, reminding us that the half hour of freedom is nearly gone. I exchange a resigned look with Will. Time's up, I mutter. Mary grips my hand. I can feel her small fingers trembling a bit. I know she dreads going back into the noise just as much as I do. Before we part, Will claps me on the back lightly. Chin up, Ollie. He calculates, only about 6 more hours to go. He says it with a wry grin, acknowledging the absurdity that such a long slog is spoken of as only. But he's trying to keep me optimistic. Only 6 hours, I echo with a smirk. Nothing to it. My voice drips with sarcasm and he laughs. Mary manages a brave smile too. We can do it, she says softly. I admire her courage. At 10 she's enduring what many grown men would balk at. We make our way back toward the factory doors. The yard empties quickly as workers shuffle back inside, the brief sparkle of life during lunch fading into dutiful obedience once more. I feel the weight of the upcoming hours settle on my shoulders like a yoke. My belly isn't full but it's less empty, and the water has refreshed me somewhat. Mentally, I brace myself. Afternoon shifts are often the hardest, as fatigue really sets in and mistakes multiply. Before stepping in, I squeeze Mary's hand. Take care, Mary. I'll see you at supper. She nods and darts off toward the weaving shed on the left. I head right, back to the spinning room. As I re-enter the building, the noise ramps up once more. Overseers have already restarted some of the machines. The relative peace of our respite evaporates instantly, replaced by clamor and hate. I rush back to my station, tying my makeshift mask, a scrap of cloth over my nose and mouth again to keep the lint out. All around, belts are re-engaging, wheels turning. Mr. Turner gives me a pointed look, glad I'm back just in time to catch a thread that snapped on my mule while I was away. I jump in and tie it off quickly, even as the machine picks up speed. The afternoon shift begins. My brief rest is over, but for that short half hour, I felt almost like a boy and not merely a cog in this industrial machine. I cling to that memory, a bite of apple, a laugh with a friend, the crisp air on my face, as I throw myself once more into the toil. It's those little moments of happiness and human connection that will carry me through whatever the rest of the day brings. The long afternoon, back at my mule, the afternoon wears on with merciless monotony. The initial energy from lunch quickly fades. My stomach, barely satisfied by bread and potato, resumes its hungry churning after an hour of work. The heat in the spinning room feels even more oppressive now. Outside, the autumn sun has risen higher, and its light streams through the high windows, but the glass is so grimy and coated with lint that the rays come through diffused, illuminating swirling motes of dust in the air. We might as well be inside a giant cotton-filled oven. Sweat drips constantly from my brow. I have nothing clean to wipe it with. My sleeves are blackened with grease and cotton dust, so I blink away the sting as salty droplets roll into my eyes. The damp, warm air is hard to breathe. I inhale, and my lungs feel clogged with the same fluffy lint that covers every surface. I cough into the crook of my arm, trying to muffle the sound. The foreman doesn't like when we cough. He takes it as a sign of malingering, but I can't help it. Many of us are coughing by this time of day. The air quality in here is awful. No ventilation except when someone briefly opens a door. They say cotton dust can lead to what the workers grimly call mill fever, or brown lung. I don't know the proper name, but I know the look of it. Older spinners with a constant wheeze and a sickly pallor, their strength sapped by years of inhaling this fluff. I force myself to focus, and keep my feet moving. The machines demand our full attention. Afternoon is a dangerous time because fatigue dulls our reflexes. I can feel it in myself. My reactions are just a tad slower than in the morning, and my hands clumsier. I nearly burn my fingers when I hastily grab a spindle that has grown hot from friction. I hiss and shake out my hand, but there's no time to tend to the reddening skin. Another thread has snapped on the next frame over, and I dash to catch it. We have no official tea break or respite in the afternoon. It's one unbroken stretch from the end of lunch until evening, perhaps 6 hours straight. To keep myself going, I start to hum a tune in my head, something Ma used to sing as a lullaby. The melody runs through my mind, a comforting thread of memory that the clanging of machinery cannot entirely drown out. I dare not sing aloud, too much noise and I'd have to shout anyway, but the mental music keeps me company. As I hum silently, my mind drifts away from the clamor for a heartbeat. I imagine I'm small again, back in our cottage before we moved here. I see Da at his old handloom by the window, the wooden frame clacking rhythmically as he works the pedals and shut. Ma is near the hearth stirring a pot of stew, humming that same lullaby tune softly to herself. Little Mary, just a toddler then, is playing with scraps of yarn on the floor, and there I am, perhaps 5 years old, dozing in a corner to the comforting sounds of home, the gentle thump of the loom, the low melody of Ma's voice blending with the crackle of the fire. In that memory, life is hard but peaceful, and safe. I don't yet know of factories or 15-hour days, only the warmth of family and the feeling of being loved and protected. A sudden scream slices through the clamor, a short sharp cry quickly muffled. My heart leaps into my throat. I'm yanked violently from my daydream back into the present. I whip my head toward the source. 2 machines down from me, one of the older girls, Bess, is doubled over, clutching her hand. The spinning mule beside her is grinding to a stop as the adult spinner in charge notices something's wrong and disengages it. I catch a glimpse of blood dripping from between Bess's fingers to the floor. Immediately, Mr. Harding is striding towards the scene. Bess straightens, tears in her eyes, cradling her right hand. The machine's spinner, a man in his 30s, holds up a frayed belt strip, likely part of the mechanism that Bess was working near. It looks like it snapped or came loose and lashed Bess's hand. Accidents like this happen in a blink. The machinery has so many moving parts that even a moment of inattention or a bit of bad luck can result in injury. Harding inspects Bess's hand briskly. Even from a distance I can see a long gash across her palm and fingers. Bright red blood wells up. and trickles down her wrist. She's biting her lip to keep from crying out again. Harding turns and bellows to a nearby worker. Take her to the infirmary, quickly now. His tone is curt, but I sense a hint of urgency, probably because he doesn't want other visiting managers, or heaven forbid, another inspector seeing a lot of blood on the factory floor. As Bess is led away, leaving droplets of blood in her wake, Harding's gaze sweeps over the rest of us who had paused to watch. Instantly, we all snap back to our tasks, hearts pounding. Any injury is a stark reminder of our own peril. My hands tremble slightly as I tie a broken thread. That could have been me or Mary, or any of us. Bess is about my age, maybe a year older, and one of the quicker, more capable pieces. Even she wasn't spared a mishap. I swallow hard, trying to calm myself. We carry on working, but the mood has shifted. A heavy silence, as silent as it can be, amidst the din falls over the children in my row. We're each lost in our own anxious thoughts. I glance at little John. His eyes are wide and he's moving very cautiously now, clearly scared. My mind drifts as my body moves on autopilot. I start thinking of others who have been hurt here before. There are so many stories. Last year, one of the younger boys, Peter, got his arm crushed in a gearing mechanism when he reached in to clear a jam, without waiting for the machine to stop fully. They said it mangled his arm bones beyond repair. He survived, but he'll never regain full use of that arm, and he certainly can't work the machines anymore. His family had to pull him out of the... I recall how he simply disappeared from our ranks, and we later learned he was sent to the poorhouse, since without his wages, his widowed mother couldn't feed all her children. The thought of poor Peter, maimed, and in the workhouse, makes me shiver even in this swelter. And then there was an even worse incident. A girl named Sarah, who worked in the weaving shed with Mary. One moment she was tending her loom, the next her long hair, she'd foolishly worn it in a loose braid, got caught in a spinning shaft. Before anyone could react, her scalp was partially torn off. She didn't die on the spot, but actually, I never found out what became of her. After the doctor carried her out, she never returned to the factory, that's for certain. Some say she succumbed to her injuries later at home. Others whisper that her family moved away, unable to bear living next to the place that disfigured their daughter. In any case, the memory of her horrifying screams haunts those who witnessed. The overseers have since enforced stricter rules about tying up hair tightly, but accidents still happen regardless of precaution. In the few years I've been here, I've already seen more accidents than I can count. Children maimed, or even killed by the machines that seem to hunger for our small bones. Truly, tragedies are routine here. We all know it, though we try not to think about it. I shake my head, dispelling those gruesome memories. I have to stay sharp. Focus, Oliver, I tell myself. Don't let yourself be the next story, whispered among the workers. I rub my eyes, which are straining in the dim light. My head is starting to ache from the constant racket, and concentrate. By now I'm operating on sheer grit and habit. Nearby, Mr. Turner notices my slowing pace. During a brief lull in his duties, he leans in and shouts in my ear over the noise. All right, lad. His voice is gruff but not unkind. Turner has kids of his own. I sometimes see them waiting for him outside after shifts, and I suspect he has a soft spot for us younger workers under his supervision. I nod quickly, managing a weak smile. He gives me a tight nod back, perhaps an understanding that we're all exhausted, and moves on. I appreciate that small gesture more than he knows. Just a bit of human concern is rare from any authority figure in here. Minutes blur into hours. My limbs feel heavy, almost detached, moving automatically to the relentless rhythm of the factory. I often lose sense of time, but I gauge the afternoon by the light shifting in the windows and the increasing throb in my feet. I silently recite a sort of mantra with each completed task. Every moment that passes is one moment closer to day's end. It's a small encouragement to keep me going. I glance over at Jacob on the next machine. He's blinking hard, fighting off the drowsiness that hits many of us in mid-afternoon. On more than one occasion, I've seen a child fall asleep, on their feet, even with all the noise around. The mind and body just reach a breaking point. Of course, any such lapse is immediately punished, so we all live in fear of nodding off. To combat it, some chew on tobacco if they can get it. I've seen a 10-year-old boy with a wad of chewing tobacco, disgusting, but he swears it keeps him awake. Others pinch themselves, or like me resort to mental tricks and quiet humming. A sharp rap on my arm jolts me out of a fog. I turned a second too late, and brushed against a spindle, earning a small cut from the moving thread. I grit my teeth, and suck on the tiny wound, tasting metal and cotton. It's minor, just a scratch, but it stings. Still, I'm lucky that's all it is. I cannot afford to be careless, not even for a minute. The afternoon sun has started its descent. I can see the light shifting to a golden hue on the wall. It must be around 4 o'clock by now, maybe later. Just a couple more hours, I tell myself, clinging to that thought. In a couple of hours, the sun will set, and if all goes well, I'll be walking out of here, sore, hungry, but alive and in one piece, with a few pennies earned for my family. Just a couple more hours, I murmur under my breath like a prayer, timed to the thump of the machines. My voice is drowned in the cacophony, but somehow hearing myself helps me remain conscious and alert. The machines don't tire, they don't feel pain or hunger, but I do. It's as if the factory wants to break you down to the point where you become machine-like, unthinking, unfeeling. I fight that by reminding myself of simple things. My name is Oliver. I have a mother and father waiting. I have a sister I must look after. I have dreams, perhaps faint ones, of a life beyond these walls. Those human thoughts keep the spark inside me alive. To my surprise, I realize I need to relieve myself. Normally, I sweat out so much that I barely pass water all day, but the midday drink must have gone through me. Another discomfort. There are no formal breaks for such need.
We're expected to hold it until the day is done, or risk punishment for sneaking off to the outhouse. Biting my lip, I press my thighs together and try to ignore the urge. Compared to all my other aches, this is just one more bodily complaint to endure. I often think of the factory like a prison in this way. Even basic bodily functions are regulated by the relentless schedule. I catch sight of Mary briefly as she passes by the spinning room door, carrying a basket of bobbins with another girl. She must be running an errand between the weaving and spinning departments. Even in that quick glimpse, I notice she looks pale, and her small shoulders sag under the weight of the basket. My heart pangs with both pride and worry. Pride that my little sister is working so hard and bravely, worry that this life is leeching the vitality out of her bit by bit. Our eyes meet fleetingly, and I give her an encouraging nod. She doesn't smile, no energy for that, but she nods. Then she's gone, swallowed by the labyrinth of machinery beyond the door. As the light in the room grows dimmer, the gas lamps are lit again by an older boy, whose duty is to tend them. The yellow flames flicker to life, casting dancing shadows. The day is nearly done, but these last hours often feel the longest. My entire being is screaming for rest, my feet to sit down, my ears for silence, my lungs for a clean breath of air, my mind for sleep. But none of that will come until the final bell rings. I push through the last stretch of the long afternoon, forcing one foot in front of the other, one thread mended after another. Each time I begin to lag, I think of something, anything, to push me on. Tommy's innocent smile this morning, Will's promise of maybe seeing the locomotive on a Sunday, the hope, however faint, that one day we might have a 10-hour day instead of 14, or even just the simple prospect of lying down on the cot at home tonight. Eventually, after what feels like an eternity, the color of the light from outside shifts to a dusky gray. The windows show the approach of evening. My heart quickens with anticipation. Soon now, we're so close. One more hour, perhaps less. Little do I know as I cling to thoughts of the day's end, that fate is preparing yet another cruel twist before the workday can finally conclude. Tragedy on the factory floor. The final hour of the workday arrives, and with it a frantic push to meet the day's production quota. There's a certain fevered intensity that grips the factory as quitting time nears. The overseers urge us to keep speed, sometimes even increasing the machine's pace to eke out a bit more output. Though my body is screaming for rest, I force myself into a second wind of sorts. Almost there, I remind myself, clinging to the promise of the closing bell. Across the spinning room, I see Mr. Harding conferring with the mill manager who has appeared on the floor. The manager's presence usually means something important, perhaps an urgent order that must be filled before we leave. Sure enough, Harding claps his hands loudly and shouts, "Listen up, we need 5 more full bobbins from each frame, before shutdown. Move along now, quick as you can. 5 more bobbins per frame, that might mean an extra 15 or 30 minutes of work beyond the usual time." A collective groan nearly escapes our lips, but we suppress it. Complaining would do no good. Instead, we redouble our efforts. The machines, pushed to their limits, rattle and groan ominously. I sense the tension in every clang and clank. They too are being strained. Threads snap more frequently at this higher speed, and I become a blur of motion, rushing between spindles to piece them back. My exhaustion forgotten for now, replaced by a kind of urgent focus. Finish the work. Get out of here. Nearby, little Tom, the 8-year-old scavenger boy who joined our section not long ago, is crawling under the end of my mule, gathering the cotton waste that has accumulated. Normally, scavengers like him are told to wait until the machines stop to do a thorough cleaning, but with the order to produce more, the overseer might have sent them in early to clear fluff that could cause snags. It's dangerous for Tom to be under there while the machine runs, but he's doing as he's told, scurrying quickly with a small broom and pan to sweep up lint and debris. I keep one eye on him whenever I can, heart pounding. He's so small under the massive machine. I remember being in his place a few years ago and how terrifying it was. Be careful, Tom, I mutter under my breath, though he surely can't hear me over the den. Will has been called over to help at a neighboring machine that's having issues. He's strong and often assists with mechanical problems. So he's a few yards away, tightening a bolt on a frame, his brow furrowed in concentration. My section of the mule is momentarily running smoothly, so I step a pace back to catch my breath. That's when I notice a snag developing on one of the threads near the far end, close to where Tom is crouched. A clump of lint has caused 2 threads to tangle and the spindle is jerky. I need to fix it before it snaps or breaks the thread guide. I dart toward the end of the mule, my feet pounding the wooden floor. Tom, watch out. I need to get in there, I shout, pointing at the spot. He looks up at me with wide eyes, shuffles back a little, but he's still partially under the machine, directly in my path to reach the snag. The mule's carriage is due to roll in any second too, as it completes its outward spin and prepares to retract. There's no time to wait. I drop to my knees and reach forward to clear the lint and separate the threads. My fingers nimbly pluck at the fibers, and I manage to free the tangle. But in that same instant I hear a sudden horrible crack. One of the drive belts on the spinning mule next to ours snaps under the increased strain. Everything happens in a blur. The loud crack startles Tom, who jolts upright in fear, inadvertently moving directly into the path of the now returning carriage of my spinning mule. I see the heavy metal frame sliding toward us, with its hundreds of spindles like teeth on a giant comb. My heart lurches. Tom is too shocked to react, frozen like a little rabbit. Without thinking, I lunge toward the boy and shove him hard, yelling, "Move, Tom." He tumbles aside out of immediate danger, but I'm a split second too slow to get myself clear. The mule's carriage slams backward along its rail. I feel a searing pain as something strikes my left shoulder and side, a metal bar catching me as I twist. The force knocks me off balance, and I collapse onto the floor next to the machine. For a heartbeat I'm dazed. The world spins and my ears ring. Then the pain hits fully, a blinding bolt of agony radiating from my shoulder and ribcage. I try to suck in a breath, but it comes shallow, every inhale stabbing like knives in my side. Above me, the spinning mule grinds to a halt. With a jolt, Turner or someone must have stopped it, seeing the accident. The floor around me is chaos. People shouting, machinery clanging as others scramble to shut things down. I dimly become aware of a new sound rising over the background din, a wail of anguish that cuts through everything. It's only after a second or two that I realize the scream is coming from my own throat. I hadn't even felt myself crying out, but the pain is so overwhelming that I can't help it. Hot tears blur my vision, shapes loom over me. One is Mr. Turner. I can make out his familiar stooped figure. Another is Will. He must have sprinted over the moment things went wrong. I see fear and panic in his eyes like I've never seen before. Oliver. Ollie. Hold on. Will's voice, usually so steady, is shaking. He kneels beside me and gently tries to help me sit up, but I scream at the slightest movement of my shoulder. He quickly stops. Don't move him. Turner barks. He might have broken bones. Everything is spinning in my head. I fight to stay conscious, focusing on the pattern of the wooden ceiling beams above. Anything to ground myself. My breath comes in ragged gasps. I manage to turn my head slightly and see Tom on the floor a short distance away, where I had shoved him. He's unharmed aside from a look of sheer terror on his face. A couple of other boys are helping him up. Thank God, he's okay. That thought is a small solace amidst my pain. Mr. Harding arrives, pushing through the gathering crowd of workers. His face is flushed with anger and alarm. Accidents of this magnitude are every overseer's nightmare, and this one involves multiple people and halting production on 2 machines. What happened? He demands, eyes darting between me, Tom, and the halted mule. Turner stands up to face Harding, squaring his shoulder. The belt on the next frame snapped, sir. It startled the lad under the machine. He nods towards Tom, and Oliver here pushed him out of the way. Oliver got caught by the carriage on the return. Turner's voice is measured, factual, but I catch an undercurrent of respect or gratitude in his tone when he mentions my action. Others murmur in agreement. Harding's gaze follows the scene. The broken belt, flapping uselessly on the neighboring machine, the pile of cotton fluff scattered where Tom fell, and me on the floor, clutching my shoulder with Will beside me. Tom, sobbing quietly now, blurts out, "I'm sorry, sir," thinking he's in trouble. Harding surprisingly ignores the boy's apology. For once, even he seems rattled, unsure whom to blame. The overseer kneels and inspects me briefly. I wince as he gingerly touches my shoulder. Pain lances down my arm, and I cry out, "Possible dislocation. Maybe broken." Harding muttered, "And your ribs?" I can't answer through my sobbing breath, but I suspect a cracked rib or two from the way it hurts to breathe. By now the factory manager has shown up too, alerted by the commotion. He's a stout, well-dressed man, with a neatly trimmed beard, a stark contrast to our filthy appearances. He takes one look at the situation and immediately tells Harding, "Get him to the infirmary. Now." Harding and Will exchange a glance. Will speaks up, voice firm, "I'll carry him." Without waiting for permission, Will carefully slides his arms under me, one behind my back, and the other under my knees. He lifts me as gently as he can. Even so, I gasp in pain as my weight shifts. My left arm dangles uselessly. I can't move it at all, and every jolt sends a fresh wave of hurt through me. "Easy, mate. I got you," Will whispers, his face set with determination. I bite down on my lip and nod weakly, trying to stifle my cry. The entire spinning room has practically ground to a halt. I see dozens of faces staring, some filled with concern, others with the blank look of shock. Some of the younger children are openly weeping, terrified by what they saw. A few of the older lads and lasses just look grim and resigned, as if to say, "There goes another one. They've seen this too many times." As Will carries me toward the exit, Harding clearing the way, I feel my consciousness flickering. The combination of pain and the shock is making everything hazy. My head lolls against Will's shoulder. Out of the corner of my eye, I catch Tom, still trembling and being hushed by a kindly older girl. He looks at me with a mixture of guilt and gratitude that tears at my heart. I manage a faint, fractured smile at him, hoping he understands I don't blame him at all. My vision swims, darkening at the edges, but I hear snippets of conversation as if from underwater. Someone says, "That boy saved the little one, pushed him right out of harm." Another voice answers, "I a hero he is." "I'm no hero," I think dimly. I just did what had to be done, but I lack the strength to speak those words aloud. We pass through the doorway and into the corridor leading to the infirmary. The relatively cool evening air from an open window brushes my face. A brief relief from the stifling heat inside. The shock of air helps me cling to consciousness a moment longer. My eyes focus enough to see specks of my own blood on my shirt. Bright red blooms spreading on the coarse cotton. I wonder distantly if it's from a cut or internal. It doesn't matter. It all hurts just the same. In the infirmary, a small room that doubles as a first aid station, a nurse or matron fusses. As Will lays me down on a cot, I recognize her, Miss Miller, a kindly middle-aged woman, employed by the mill to tend minor injuries. Her hands are gentle but firm as she examines me. There's a flurry of activity. I hear fabric ripping, perhaps cutting away my shirt to see the wounds, the clink of a porcelain basin, the murmured instructions to fetch clean water and bandages. I catch only fragments. Shoulder dislocated for sure, possibly broken collarbone, lots of bruising, ribs. Each phrase confirms the damage I already feel in my bones. When she manipulates my left arm to feel the shoulder joint, I scream hoarsely and black out for a sec. When I come to, Will is kneeling at my side, holding my right hand tightly. "You're all right, Ollie. You'll be all right," he keeps repeating, though his own tears betray his worry. I manage a faint squeeze of his hand to let him know I hear it. I have to cough, but it hurts terribly still. A bit of dust and saliva rattles in my throat, and I turn my head to spit. To my surprise, I see a couple small flecks of blood. I hope that's just from biting my tongue or lip, and not something worse. Miss Miller returns with a bottle and a cloth. "This will help with the pain, dear," she says softly. She pours something likely laudanum, the opium tincture they use for injuries, onto the cloth and brings it to my lips. I taste a bitter, pungent liquid and nearly gag, but Will encourages me. "Drink it, Ollie.
I manage to swallow a few spoonfuls of the draft. It burns going down, but within minutes a heavy drowsiness begins to blanket my mind. The pain, while still present, becomes distant, as if happening to someone else. Everything around me begins to blur at the edge. I see the concerned faces of Will and Miss Miller, hovering above, and behind them, the anxious crowd of co-workers who followed to the infirmary door. Among those faces, I finally see Mary. Someone must have fetched her. She stands at the back, eyes wide with fright, hands over her mouth. Our eyes meet and her face crumples as she bursts into tears. She tries to rush forward, but a neighbor holds her, likely to spare me from being jostled. "I'm all right, Mary," I attempt to say. I'm not sure if the words actually escape my lips or if I only think that. My eyelids grow heavy. I feel myself sinking into a haze. As consciousness slips, I hear one of the managers telling the others, "That boy may have saved a life today. We must see he's taken care of." Another voice mutters, "We'll likely have to let him rest at home for a while. He won't be working for weeks at least." Working? Yes, work is over for today. I realize. I made it to the end, though not in the way I anticipate. Instead of walking out on my own 2 feet, I'm lying broken on a cot. A bitter thought crosses my mind. All this, all these injuries and pain, for the sake of a few more bobbins of thread. The machines claimed their price from my flesh today. The world narrows to a tunnel. The last thing I recall is Will's hand, still clutching mine, and Mary's sobbing voice calling my name from a distance. I want to comfort them, to tell them I'll be okay, but the laudanum pulls me down into darkness before I can form the word. In that darkness, one persistent image stays with me, little Tom's frightened face, and the knowledge that at least he, thanks to a small act of sacrifice, will get to go home alive tonight. That single thought gives me a glimmer of solace, as I finally surrender to oblivion.
Aftermath and reflections. I awake in my own bed in the dead of night, disoriented and in pain. For a moment, I don't know where I am, or what happened. The room is dark, save for the faint glow of dying embers in the hearth. The familiar shape of the rafters above tells me I am home, in our cramped cottage room. The events of the day come rushing back like a nightmare. The mill, the broken machine, the impact pain flares anew in my shoulder and ribs, as if to confirm it wasn't just a dream. I try to sit up slightly and immediately regret it. A burning ache radiates through my left side. I stifle a groan, not wanting to wake anyone, but I feel a gentle hand on my right arm. "Oliver," Ma's whisper comes from beside me. In the dim light, I make out her form in the dim light. I make out her form sitting on a stool at my bedside. She's been watching over me. "I'm here, Ma," I rasp. My throat is dry and raw, perhaps from all the screaming earlier, I dimly realize. She shifts and brings a cup to my lips. "Drink, love." It's water. I sip greedily, and the coolness soothes me. As my eyes adjust, I see that the whole family is huddled in this one room. Durr lies on his cot a few feet away, appearing to be asleep, though his face is turned toward me, brow creased with worry, even in rest. Mary is curled up at the foot of my bed, wrapped in a shawl. She must have refused to leave my side too. Little Tommy is in Ma's lap, surprisingly quiet, as if he senses the need to be calm. How long was I out?" I manage to ask between shallow breath. Ma brushes my damp hair from my forehead. "It's past midnight now. They brought you home just after sundown." Her voice trembles with relief and lingering fear. "The doctor came and set your shoulder. You gave us all a fright." I turn my head gingerly to see Mary. Her eyes are open now, shining with tears in the faint firelight. "Ollie," she sniffles. She crawls up carefully to lay next to me, her small hand finding mine. "I was so scared. I thought we'd lost you." Her words break into a quiet sob. I swallow, squeezing her hand weakly. "I'm still here," I whisper. My own eyes grow moist, seeing my little sister's tear-streaked face. I feel a rush of guilt for the anguish I've caused them, but it's mixed with profound gratitude that I'm not alone. I survived, broken and battered, but alive, and my family is here. Their love, evident in every worried glance and touch. Ma's face comes into view again. "Your shoulder was dislocated. Doctor says your collarbone might be broken too." He wrapped it tight. I become aware of the rigid bandaging around my upper torso and left arm, immobilizing it. "And your ribs, likely cracked. You need lots of rest, my sweet boy." I nod slightly. Each breath is still painful, but less sharp than before, perhaps thanks to whatever medicine they gave me. Will and Tom, are they? Will walked you home along with the doctor, Ma answers. He wanted to stay, but I sent him home to his mother. Poor lad was beside himself with worry. He'll come see you tomorrow, I'm sure. She pauses, hesitate. And the little boy, Tom, he's all right. His mother came by earlier to thank you. She called you an angel for saving her son. I let out a long exhale of relief. Amidst the misery of my situation, at least I succeeded in protecting Tom. If I had failed, I shudder to think of an even worse outcome, one where the little boy was the one lying hurt or dead. That thought would have been a far heavier burden than any of my injuries. Mary speaks up softly. Ollie, everyone at the mill is talking about how brave you were. She attempts a smile. They say you saved Tom like a hero from a story. I flush at that, uncomfortable. I don't feel like a hero. Any one of us would have done the same if we could, I think. We look out for each other because often no one else will. I recall the other times older kids helped save younger ones from harm. It's just how we survive. But I don't argue with Mary. If it makes her proud of me, I won't diminish it. I only nod a little and whisper, I'm glad Tom is safe. My voice is thick. Talking takes effort, and I slip into silence for a while. Ma coaxes me to drink a bit more water, and has me chew on a willow bark tincture for pain. Its bitter taste spreads through my mouth. As the family watches over me, I notice how worn Ma and Da look. Da, awakened now, reaches out and squeezes my leg gently, the nearest part of me he can reach from his cot. His eyes glisten with unshed tears. Rest, son, he says hoarsely. You'll be all right. We'll manage. He says we'll manage. But I know that it's the same brave face he put on when he lost his weaving job for good. It's the face of a father trying to be strong when the world is collapsing around him. The truth is, unmistakable, I won't be able to work for weeks, maybe longer. My wages, scant as they were, will be lost during that time. The thought gnaws at me. I've gone from being an asset to my family to another burden overnight. I'm sorry, I croak, emotion welling in my chest, regret and fear. I won't be able to work for a while. It hurts to say it as if admitting it solidifies the dire reality. Ma hushes me immediately, pressing a finger to my lips. None of that, Ollie. You focus on getting better. That's what matters. We'll find a way to get by. Her words are firm, almost scolding me for worrying about work at a time like this. But how can I not worry? I know what a week without my earnings means for us. Less bread on the table, perhaps skipping paying rent if it comes to that. Mary's small wage alone can't sustain the four of us. And baby Tommy, Da tries what he can, but with his bad leg and scarce opportunities, it's as if reading my thoughts. Da speaks quietly. The mill manager said they'd keep your position for when you recover. They even sent half your week's wage in advance. His voice carries a note of bitterness. Half a week's wage is a pittance, perhaps a few shillings, as all my labor and suffering are apparently worth. Still, it's something. The owners likely fear bad press or simply want to ensure I come back to work as soon as possible to not lose an experienced piecer. Half wage, I murmur, for almost losing my life. Better than nothing, I try to tell myself, but the injustice of it all clings to my mind. In the eyes of the mill, I'm just cheap labor, even now, broken and bandaged. They settle the matter with a token payment and expect me back at the machines once I can stand. A surge of frustration wells up, despite my physical weakness. I stare at the dark ceiling and whisper, all that, for a few shillings. My voice trembles. I recall the terror and agony of the accident. I remember Bess's bleeding hand earlier, and little John's beating, and Peter with his crushed arm sent to the poorhouse. We give so much, our sweat, our blood, sometimes our lives, to those machines, and the profits of men who likely never set foot on a factory floor. And what do we get? A stomach that's never full, a childhood cut short, scars and broken bones, perhaps an early grave. Tears slip down my temple. I'm not even sure if they're from the pain, or the anger, or the despair, probably all three. Mary hears my words and sniffles, squeezing my hand tighter. Ma and Da exchange a worried glance. Da clears his throat. Now, don't think about that. You saved a life today, Olive. That counts for something greater than any wage. His tone is gentle but firm. He's trying to lift my spirits. I know. I close my eyes. Da is right in a sense. Tom's life is beyond price. In that regard, I'd do it again, even knowing but the practical reality remains. We are barely hanging on. Da senses my continued gloom. I hear him draw a long breath. I know it feels unjust. I cursed these machines long ago, son. I truly did. Da continues, his voice low and strained. When I was a young man, and the weaving shop started closing, some of us weavers broke into a mill one night, and smashed in the dim light. I make out her form sitting on a stool at my bedside. She's been watching over me. I'm here, Ma. My throat is dry and raw, perhaps from all the screaming earlier. I dimly realize. She shifts, and brings a cup to my lips. Drink, love. It's water. I sip greedily, and the coolness soothes me. As my eyes adjust, I see that the whole family is huddled in this one room. Da lies on his cot a few feet away, appearing to be asleep, though his face is turned toward me, brow creased with worry, even in rest. Mary is curled up at the foot of my bed, wrapped in a shawl. She must have refused to leave my side too. Little Tommy is in Ma's lap, surprisingly quiet as if he senses the need to be calm. How long was I out? I manage to ask between shallow breaths. Ma brushes my damp hair from my forehead. It's past midnight now. They brought you home just after sundown. Her voice trembles with relief and lingering fear. The doctor came and set your shoulder. You gave us all a fright. I turn my head gingerly to see Mary. Her eyes are open now, shining with tears in the faint firelight. Ollie, she sniffed. She crawls up carefully to lay next to me, her small hand finding mine. I was so scared. I thought we'd lost you. Her words break into a quiet sob. I swallow, squeezing her hand weakly. I'm still here, I whisper. My own eyes grow moist, seeing my little sister's tear-streaked face. I feel a rush of guilt for the anguish I've caused them, but it's mixed with profound gratitude that I'm not alone. I survived, broken and battered, but alive. And my family is here. Their love, evident in every worried glance and Ma's face comes into view again. Your shoulder was dislocated. Doctor says your collarbone might be broken too. He wrapped it tight. I become aware of the rigid bandaging around my upper torso and left arm, immobilizing it. And your ribs, likely you need lots of rest, my sweet boy. I nod slightly. Each breath is still painful, but less sharp than before, perhaps thanks to whatever medicine they gave me. Will and Tom, are they? Will walked you home along with the doctor. Ma answers. He wanted to stay, but I sent him home to his mother. Poor lad was beside himself with worry. He'll come see you tomorrow, I'm sure. She pauses, hesitating. And the little boy, Tom, he's all right. His mother came by earlier to thank you. She called you an angel for saving her son. I let out a long exhale of relief. Amidst the misery of my situation, at least I succeeded in protecting Tom. If I had failed, I shudder to think of an even worse outcome, one where the little boy was the one lying hurt or dead. That thought would have been a far heavier burden than any of my injuries. Mary speaks up softly. Ollie, everyone at the mill is talking about how brave you were. She attempts a smile. They say you saved Tom like a hero from a story. I flush at that. Uncomfortable. I don't feel like a hero. Any one of us would have done the same if we could. I think we look out for each other, because often no one else will. I recall the other times older kids help save younger ones from harm. It's just how we survive. But I don't argue with Mary. If it makes her proud of me, I won't diminish it. I only nod a little and whisper, I'm glad Tom is safe. My voice is thin. Talking takes effort, and I slip into silence for a while. Ma coaxes me to drink a bit more water, and has me chew on a willow bark tincture for pain. Its bitter taste spreads through my mouth. As the family watches over me, I notice how worn Ma and Da look. Da, awakened now, reaches out and squeezes my leg gently, the nearest part of me he can reach from his cot. His eyes glisten with unshed tears. Rest, son, he says hoarsely. You'll be all right. We'll manage. He says we'll manage. But I know that tone. It's the same brave face he put on when he lost his weaving work for good. It's the face of a father, trying to be strong when the world is collapsing around him. The truth is unmistakable. I won't be able to work for weeks, maybe longer. My wages, scant as they were, will be lost during that time. The thought gnaws at me. I've gone from being an asset to my family to another burden overnight. I'm sorry, I croak, emotion welling in my chest, regret and fear. I won't be able to work for a while. It hurts to say it, as if admitting it solidifies the dire reality. Ma hushes me immediately, pressing a finger to my lips. None of that, Ollie. You focus on getting better. That's what matters. We'll find a way to get by. Her words are firm, almost scolding me for worrying about work at a time like this. But how can I not worry? I know what a week without my earnings means for us. Less bread on the table. Perhaps skipping paying rent if it comes to that. Mary's small wage alone can't sustain the four of us. And baby Tommy. Da tries what he can, but with his bad leg and scarce opportunities, it's bleak. As if reading my thoughts, Da speaks quietly. The mill manager said they'd keep your position for when you recover. They even sent half your week's wage in advance. His voice carries a note of bitterness. Half a week's wage is a pittance, perhaps. A few shillings, as all my labor and suffering are apparently worth. Still, it's something. The owners likely fear bad press, or simply want to ensure I come back to work as soon as possible, to not lose an experienced piecer. Half wage, I murmur, for almost losing my life. Better than nothing, I try to tell myself, but the injustice of it all clings to my mind. In the eyes of the mill, I'm just cheap labor. Even now, broken and bandaged, they settle the matter with a token payment and expect me back at the machines once I can stand. A surge of frustration wells up. Despite my physical weakness, I stare at the dark ceiling and whisper, all that for a few shillings. My voice trembles. I recall the terror and agony of the accident. I remember Bess's bleeding hand earlier, and little John's beating, and Peter with his crushed arm sent to the poorhouse. We give so much, our sweat, our blood, sometimes our lives, to those machines, and the profits of men, who likely never set foot on a factory floor. And what do we get? A stomach that's never full. A childhood cut short. Scars and broken bones, perhaps. An early grave. Tears slip down my temples. I'm not even sure if they're from the pain or the anger or the despair. Probably all three. Mary hears my words and sniffles, squeezing my hand tighter. Ma and Da exchange a worried glance. Da clears his throat. Now, don't think about that. You saved a life today, Oliver. That counts for something greater than any wage. His tone is gentle but firm, trying to lift my spirits. I close my eyes. Da is right in a sense. Tom's life is beyond price. In that regard, I'd do it again, even knowing the cost. But the practical reality remains. We are barely hanging on. Da senses my continued gloom. I hear him draw a long breath. I cursed these machines long ago, son. I truly did. He continues, voice low and strained. When I was a young man and the weaving shops started closing, some of us weavers broke into a mill one night and smashed a mechanical loom to bits. We were so angry and desperate. We thought destroying it might save our craft. But it didn't stop anything. New machines replaced the broken ones, and the mills only grew. The law came down hard on frame breakers too. Some of my mates were jailed, even hanged as examples. I was lucky to escape punishment, but in the end I lost my livelihood anyway. He sighs heavily, a sound full of old bitterness and sorrow. I fought against this cruel system and still it took everything. I'm sorry, Oliver, he says, voice quavering. I'm sorry you children have to bear this burden. If I could have stopped it back then, you might never have had to set foot in that cursed factory. Ma interjects softly, trying to lighten the mood. But we still have each other, she says, resting a hand on Da's arm. And not every day is so dark. I know she's trying to remind me of the few blessings we hold on to. It makes me think of one of our rare happy moments. A Sunday afternoon last spring. We had all walked to a green common on the edge of town. After church. The day was unusually warm and clear, with the smoke thinned by a breeze. Mary and I found a patch of grass by a pond, and we actually truly played, chasing a cloth ball I'd stitched from rags. Little Tommy squealed with laughter at our game, and even Da managed to smile as he watched. Ma laid out a small loaf, and some cheese she'd saved, and it became a picnic. I remember lying on that grass, panting and laughing, feeling the sun on my face, and thinking, so this is what a normal childhood afternoon might feel like. It only lasted an hour or two, but that simple outing remains one of my most cherished memories. In our world of toil, such moments are painfully few and precious beyond measure. Ma's attempt at cheer does lift the heaviness a bit. I smile at the memory through my tears. We have that at least. I whisper. My gaze drifts to little Tommy,
asleep in Ma's lap. His chubby fist is wrapped around a bit of Ma's shawl. He's blissfully unaware of all this trouble. He won't remember the trauma of today, he's too young. But if nothing changes, he'll face the same fate in a few years. The thought of Tommy in a factory as a toddler, like those pauper apprentices we've heard about, sends a bolt of protective anger through me. Many children in the mills don't even have the comfort of family orphans sent from workhouses to work as unpaid apprentices, who sleep in barracks by the factory, and have no mother or father to soothe their pain. I've seen those poor orphan boys and girls. Their eyes hold a loneliness even deeper than my own. However terrible my day is, at least I can come home to Ma's embrace. They have only the factory masters to tend their wounds, and more often than not, they're shown no mercy at all. As I lie there, I also realize something with a heavy finality. I don't think I'll be going back to the mill anytime soon. Maybe not ever. My shoulder throbs, and my ribs stab with each breath. If bones healed wrong, or if I remain frail, the mill won't want. And yet the idea of not returning to that hellish place brings me more relief than fear, at least in this moment. Perhaps it's the pain talking, or the laudanum still in my system, but as I lay surrounded by my family's love, I feel a strange sense of peace wash over me. I have given so much at so young an age. My childhood, my health, my innocence. The industrial age may be forging a new world of steam and iron, but it's doing so with the broken bodies and shattered dreams of children like me. My eyelids grow heavy again. Exhaustion pulls at me, deeper and more insistent than before. Ma notices and shoos Mary off the bed gently so I can lie down flat. "Sleep, Oliver," she murmurs, smoothing the blanket around me. Mary nestles next to me atop the covers, unwilling to leave. Deer eases back onto his cot with a groan, his leg likely paining him after the night's vigil. Ma hums softly, a familiar lullaby tune, as she rocks Tommy and watches over the two of us. The melody is the same I had imagined earlier at the factory, the one that sustained me. Hearing it now in real life, in the comfort of home, nearly brings tears to my eyes again. I let the soft notes carry me toward a much-needed rest. As I drift, I carry one hope, faint but persistent, that maybe someday, things will change. If not for me, then for the countless others like me. Perhaps our suffering will not be in vain. Perhaps those men in Parliament will finally put an end to this cruelty. Or perhaps the factory owners will find some compassion. It's a distant dream, and I doubt I'll live to see it realized. But thinking of it is the only comfort I have as I surrender to the night. Tomorrow will come, and with it its own pains and struggles. Whether I face it or not, hardly seems to matter in the grand scheme. The mills will keep spinning, the smoke will keep rising, and children will continue to toil from dawn to dusk. It's a harsh world, and not every story has a happy ending. Mine certainly has. Still, nestled in the warmth of my family, I allow myself to hope, however fragilely, that the future might be kinder to those who come after me. With Ma's lullaby in my ears, and Mary's tiny hand in mine, I finally slip into a deep, dreamless sleep, leaving the clamor and pain of the day behind.
Epilogue. Winter's End. It is late winter now, some months since the accident. I turned 13 not long ago, though there was little celebration, just Ma hugging me gently, careful of my frail bones, and Mary whispering, "Happy birthday," before she left for the mill at dawn. My injuries never fully healed. The doctor did what he could for my shoulder and ribs, and they mended after a fashion, but I've never regained my strength. Worse yet, a sickness settled into my lungs during the cold weeks I was recovering. Perhaps it was the cotton dust that had already been building up inside me, or the chill and damp of our drafty home, while I was too weak to move. Perhaps it was simply fate. I developed a deep, racking cough not long after New Year's, and it has only grown worse. Ma tries every remedy, mustard plasters, herbal broths, even a tonic from the apothecary, but nothing cures it. In truth, I feel myself wasting away a little more each day. I spend my hours alone at home now, while Mary and Dan, when he can, go out to work. Yes, Mary still works at the mill. Only a week after my accident, our family's dire need forced her back to the spinning floors. The law that says children under 13 should only work limited hours with schooling was never really enforced at our factory. Mary is only 11 now, and still toils from dawn till dusk, just as I did. The Factory Act of 1833 was supposed to bring relief, but for us nothing truly changed. An inspector did come by once more, but the mill owners hid the youngest children and pretended to follow the rules while he toured. After he left, it was back to business as usual. Mary misses me at the mill, she tells me, but she's managing. She's a tough little girl. She's had to become one. Dad picks up bits of labor when he isn't nursing me or searching for food. Yes, Dad nurses me now. How the roles have reversed. Ma stays home to care for Tommy and me. She's taken in some mending work, sewing for a neighbor to earn a few pennies. It's barely enough to keep a roof over our heads and bread on the table. With my wage gone, and medical expenses adding up, debts have piled high. The half wage the mill paid after my accident ran out long ago. I see the worry in Ma and Dad's eyes when the landlord comes knocking, or when the pantry is almost bare. More than once I've heard them murmuring at night, wondering how they'll keep feeding us through the winter. I feel a heavy guilt, knowing that my inability to work has made things so much harder. Sometimes I even wish the accident had taken me outright, so at least they wouldn't have another mouth to feed. But I push those dark thoughts away when I see Mary's face each evening. She's exhausted and pale, yet she always greets me with a soft smile and a gentle touch on my arm. I know my living presence, however feeble, still brings her comfort. It's bitterly cold today. A February wind whistles through the cracks in our cottage walls. I'm bundled under every scrap of blanket we own, yet I can't stop shivering. Each cough racks my body and leaves a coppery taste of blood on my tongue. Ma sits by the hearth coaxing a small flame from the last of our coal. We couldn't afford more fuel this week, so she's stretching what we have, burning a handful of coal and some old wood scraps. The fire casts flickering shadows on the walls. I watch the shapes dance and let my mind drift. I think of the mill often. In some strange way I miss it, or rather I miss feeling productive, being part of the daily bustle alongside my friends. Being bedridden is its own kind of prison, a quieter one but just as confining. Sometimes in my fevered dreams, I hear the roar of the spinning machines, and find myself back on the factory floor, whole and strong, piecing threads with ease. Then I wake up and it's only the sound of my own raspy breathing in the dark. Will comes by on Sundays to tell me all the news. He's taken on extra hours at the mill. They promoted him to a more senior position, moving heavy loads, thanks to his strength. He always brings a little treat, an apple, a bit of meat pie his mum managed to send, and scolds me if I don't eat it. I do my best to nibble, but I have little appetite these days. Will's eyes betray his fear each time he sees me thinner and weaker than before. He tries to stay cheerful, chatting about this and that, how Tom, the boy I saved, is growing tall and has become an errand boy in the mill now, how there's talk of new machines coming that might make work easier, or possibly take away jobs, how the 10 hours movement is still pushing in Parliament. Lord Ashley's campaigning hard for us, Will said last Sunday, hope flickering in his eye. Maybe in a few years nobody will have to work more than 10 hours a day, not just kids but adults too. I smiled for his sake, but we both know change comes slowly, far too slowly for me. Still, I'm glad Will hasn't lost his optimism. In his sturdy frame and bright eyes, I see the future, perhaps a better one, continuing, even as I feel mine fading. Little Tom himself visited a few weeks after my accident, brought by his mother. The poor woman thanked me through tears for saving her boy. She left a warm shawl she'd knitted for me. I was incredibly touched. We hardly knew them, and they had so little to spare, yet they gave me one of the nicest things they owned. The shawl now rests over my shoulders, providing comfort not just from its warmth, but from the kindness it represents. Tom is a sweet child. He hugged me gently, mindful of my injuries, and promised he'd say a prayer for me each night. "You've got to get better, Ollie," he said in his high-pitched voice. "I want you to come back to the mill. I miss you there." That nearly broke my heart. I ruffled his hair and told him I'd try my best. He doesn't understand, but that's all right. He's too young to know some promises can't be kept. The afternoon light is dimming now. Ma has stepped out to buy a bit of milk, taking Tommy with her bundled up in blankets. Daya's at the door, peering down the street anxiously for Mary. The shift should have ended a half hour ago, but she's not yet home. Perhaps the overseer kept them late again. I can see Daya's silhouette stiffen with relief as he spots her at last rounding the corner. Through the window I watch Mary trudging toward the house, head bowed against the biting wind. She's wrapped in my old coat, the one that was once Daya's. It hangs off her slim frame, flapping in the gusts. Even from here I can tell she's utterly spent. My eyes well with tears at the sight. My little sister has had to grow up far too fast, all because I can no longer provide. Day opens the door and Mary slips inside, teeth chattering. Hello Day, I hear her greet quietly. She doesn't complain about the cold, just stomps the soot from her feet and quickly moves to the bedside to see me. Ollie, she says, her voice gentle despite her obvious fatigue. I muster a smile for her. Welcome home, I whisper. I try to sound normal as if I were just a brother waiting up for her after a day's work. She sits on the edge of the bed and takes my hand. Her fingers are like ice. You're burning up, she murmurs, concern knitting her brow, as she feels my forehead. I can tell by her face that I must have a fever again. I'm all right, I lie. Truthfully, I feel like a ghost of myself, feverish and light-headed, but I won't burden her with that knowledge. She has enough to carry. Dea closes the door to keep out the draught. Mary pulls off the coat and wraps it around my shoulders atop the shawl and blankets. You need this more than me, she insists softly when I feebly protest. I don't argue further. The coat carries the scent of the mill, cotton dust and machine oil, and for a moment it's as if the factory's shadow has followed Mary in. Mary chatters about small things as she tends to me, how a kind older spinner gave her a portion of bread during lunch because she noticed Mary hadn't, how one of the machines broke down today, and it reminded everyone of my accident, and they all fell silent for a while. How she's been moved to a slightly better station closer to a window. I can tell she's trying to keep the conversation light, to distract both of us from my condition. I listen and nod, interjecting a word or two when I can. As she speaks, I can't help noticing how thin she's gotten. Her cheeks, once cherubic, are hollowing. There's a bruise on her forearm. I see it when she adjusts the blanket, a dark blotch she tries to hide under her sleeve. She likely got it caught on a machine, or perhaps it's the mark of a punishment for some minor mistake. Each mark on her body feels like an indictment of this cruel system. I wish I could spare her from it all, but I'm powerless here, a spectator to my own family's suffering. Night falls. Ma returns with Tommy, bringing a bit of milk and a half loaf of bread she managed to barter for. It's more than I expected. We have a quiet supper. They even coax me to sip some warm milk and swallow a few bites of bread. I compliment Mary on being strong and helping the family. She blushes and says she only does what she must, echoing words I used to say. I realize she's taken on my role in many ways. Later, the family settles down for the night. Tommy sleeps beside me, warm and innocent. Mary nestles on my other side under the Dare's snoring softly in his cot. He spent the evening rubbing liniment on his bad leg, the cold aggravating his old injury. Ma sits darning a sock by firelight, her eyes heavy but determined to finish her task. I drift in and out, my body feverish and weird. At one point I wake to find Mary also awake, gazing at me with a sad expression. Noticing I've opened my eyes, she quickly plasters on a smile. Can't sleep? I ask, my voice barely audible. She shakes her head and murmurs, I'm listening to your breathing. I know what she means. My breath has a wet, rattling sound these days, and it scares her. I squeeze her hand weakly. I'm still here, I assure her. She nods, wiping away a tear that escapes down her cheek. I'm so glad, she whispers. I don't know what I'd do without you. Her words cut through me. I fight back a wave of pain, emotional more than physical. I don't want to leave her, or any of them, but I feel an irresistible tide, pulling me away slowly, night by night. In that darkest hour before dawn, I find myself strangely at peace. Mary has finally fallen asleep, her head resting against my shoulder. I am in pain, yes, but I am also enveloped by the love of my family. Ma has dozed off in her chair mid-darning, and the little room is filled with the soft sounds of their slumber. If this is to be my last night on earth, I am grateful that I am not spending it on a factory floor, or in some infirmary with strangers. I'm at home, surrounded by those I love. So many of my fellow child workers met far lonelier ends in accidents that killed them on the spot, or in workhouses with no family allowed by. I have been given a chance to say goodbye, even if only in gestures and unspoken feeling. Through the curtain, that same lone star I saw on the night of my accident peeks faintly. I summon the last bit of strength in my heart, to make one final wish on it. I wish for Mary to live. I wish for her to survive this harsh world, maybe even escape it someday, and have a life that isn't defined by dust and drudgery. If one of us can break free, maybe everything we've endured will have meaning. My eyes feel heavy. The fever washes over me in waves.
oddly soothing now, like I'm floating on a warm sea. I find myself recalling a snippet of a poem one of the older boys recited once, something about finding rest. Rest. That sounds so nice. As I close my eyes, I sense dawn is near. A new day will soon begin, the mills will roar back to life, and the cycle will continue. But for me, whether I see that sunrise or not, the long night of this life is ending. Mary stirs in her sleep, and tightens her small arms around me, as if she knows I might slip away. A tear slides down my face, disappearing into my pillow. With the last of my consciousness, I focus on the feeling of her embrace. Mars' gentle snores, Dur's silhouette, by the hearth. This is my world, imperfect, unjust, but filled with love. If I am to leave it now, I take comfort in knowing that, for a short while at least, I made a difference. I saved a life. I experienced friendship and laughter. I felt a sister's love, and a mother's care. Those are things no factory can take from me. My breathing shallow. I do not fear what comes next, not anymore. The grim reality is that many like me have gone before, and many more will follow, until the day this system changes for good. Perhaps my broken body might speak louder than I ever could. Perhaps those with power will look at children like me, and finally feel compelled to act. But if not, if nothing changes, then let my story stand as a testament. We were here, we suffered, we struggled, we lived as fully as we could, under the weight of it all. We mattered. With that final thought, I allow myself to surrender to the darkness. The sounds of the world fade, replaced by a gentle silence. In that silence, I fancy I hear the distant hum of a spinning wheel turning one last time, and then finally, blessed rest.